Hello everyone. Okay, so this is the second half of our preparing graphics for the laser cutter tutorial. So in the previous video we talked about how to prepare a raster graphic for the engraving operation in Photoshop, and now we are going to hop over to Illustrator where we are going to design a vector path that the laser cutter will use as a guide when it cuts out our piece of acrylic. So let's open up Illustrator. And you'll see that there's a lot in common with Photoshop in terms of the way the interface looks, but there's also some things that are different. So one of the main things that's the same is making a new file. So we're going to go up and we're going to click New. And since we're working with a 6x6 piece of acrylic, we're going to make our artboard 6x6. Now when we are in Photoshop, our design space, we often call it the canvas. When we're in Illustrator, we call the design space an artboard. So just a little difference in terminology for you there. And let's give it a name, LED laser lamp. Sure, that works. Okay, so here's our file. And before we get into the design part of this here, we can take a look and notice that something's missing. Don't have our rulers. So just like in Photoshop, we can show our rulers by clicking on View, Rulers, and Show Rulers. Woohoo, there they are. All right, so we've got our rulers, we have our layers panel. If you don't see the layers panel, make sure you, it might be underneath one of the other tabs. If you don't see it, you should be able to find it by going to Window and by enabling the layers panel. But it should be there by default. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in our graphic that we designed in Photoshop. Now, Illustrator its main purpose is to design vector artwork, but it can have raster graphics in the artwork, so you can put stuff in here even though it's not a vector image. It doesn't convert it to a vector image, but we can put it in there. So one of the ways we can bring a raster graphic in, or any graphic for that matter, is by going to Place. And this is the Photoshop file that I made in the previous tutorial, so we're going to grab that and click on Place, and you'll see that the cursor now has a little mini version of the race car graphic attached to the cursor. So that basically means wherever I click it, it's going to put that image right where I click it, starting with the upper left-hand corner as our origin. So I want it to be right on the page here, so I'm going to click in that upper left corner so that it drops that image right in there. Perfect, just like that. And we'll see if we go into layer 1, there's our graphic. Awesome. Okay, so you don't have to create a new layer, but I'm going to recommend that you do. That way, if you need to hide the car for any reason, and also the color is blue for the car layer, and then your vector layer will have a color of red. So there's a couple ways we could do this. So we could do the quick and easy way, which would be to grab a shape. We could grab the rounded rectangle and just make a rectangle around the image, and oh, it's not gone, it's just on top of it. So if we drag that layer underneath, good to go. That would be it. However, there's a couple things we have to keep in mind. The lamp base that we're designing is going to have a slit in it that the piece of acrylic is going to slide into, and the diameter, the width of that slit is 5 inches. So we have to have a base piece here that is going to actually fit into that slit, and then the piece of acrylic can expand outward from here. And I'm going to edit in a picture of this so you can see what I'm talking about. Get out of here. Okay, so this is not going to work for this particular application, but say I was making a sign and I just wanted to cut out a nice rounded rectangle. This would be it, and I would be pretty much ready to send the job to the laser cutter. But that's not what we're doing, so let's delete that. Okay, so our slit is about 4 inches or 5 inches wide. We're not going to make the piece of acrylic exactly 5 inches. We'll make it a little less than that. And I'm going to use our guides as a way to help with that here. So I'm going to drop one here at a 1/2 inch. Okay, so this would be exactly 5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we're gonna inch it inward a tiny bit because we don't want to make that graphic, we don't want to have the fit be that tight. So we're gonna bring it in a tiny bit on both sides. Give a little wiggle room. Okay, so the base of our piece of acrylic needs to be as wide as these two guides. So another way to draw lines is to grab the pen tool, which is over here, and we are going to simply, we can use our guides to start. I'm actually going to recommend that we start right here, and then we move our way across. And you can see that Illustrator kind of tries to help you keep things even. You can also hold the Shift key as you're going. That will also kind of help snap it into place so that it's exactly horizontal. You can also see off to the right, it says D equals 4.71 inches. So that is how wide our line segment is, which is also very helpful to us because we're trying to keep our this piece of the cut path under 5 inches, so that's great. So let's click to make another point. And the depth of the area that this needs to fit into is about 1/4 inch. I measured it. So again, just to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room, I would recommend that you make this height here about 1/3 of an inch or so. Okay. It's a little much, but that's fine. Okay, now right now, it kind of looks here like the lines aren't connected, and don't be scared. It is just that the guide is in the way, and I know this because I already messed up twice doing this by thinking, oh no, it didn't connect them, but trust me, it did. Okay, so just like in the spline game, we can click and drag to make a line with handles, and we can do that as we go. And it's always kind of good to have some more control points than you need because you can always remove them later. I've done this already once or twice as I've made this video, and I have found that the first 2 times I did this, I didn't really put enough control points in, so I was fooling around with only a few control points trying to get that to work. All right, so last thing here is I'm going to make a nice little curve and then click. We can see that once we get to the end, to that closed loop, we get that little 0. Perfect. All right. So now, unlike in the spline game, we have the opportunity to fix and fine-tune this line. So, in order to do that, we have 2 different arrow tools up here. And if we click on the one on the right, called the Direct Selection tool, it's white, that allows us to click on the individual anchor points and adjust them how we want them to be. So, I'm going to just do a little fine-tuning here. Okay, so just some design advice for you is that this edge down here is where the LEDs are going to be. Sometimes it's tempting to have that curve come all the way in, and that looks cool on paper, but you need to allow the LED light a nice clear path to shine through and up into your graphic. So if you cut this away, this back part of your graphic will not light up very nicely. So you want to make sure you have a nice clear path for the light to travel along as it moves up and into your graphic. All right, not bad. Oh, it looks like it disappeared. It didn't though. Wonder how I said Illustrator can be tricky? Come on, there you are. Okay, so last thing before we send this off to the laser cutter is we have to do something to the line in order for the laser cutter to recognize it as a cut path. And what we do here is we have to make the outline red. Random, but that's what it wants. So this is the fill, which means what the inside of the path has, and this line means it's empty. And right now, that's why it disappeared when we clicked away from it. The path itself was also having no color associated with it. So, quick and easy way to make the line true red is to look at our RGB here. We just type 255 and leave these two guys at 0. And we hit OK. All right. Now the last thing we want to do is we click over to Properties, and where we look at the stroke, we can see that we have both two different places on our screen showing us the same information. Right here. We want to change this to a super tiny width, so 0.001, and hit Enter. And then when we click away from our line, it almost looks like it's gone, but if we zoom in, we might be able to see it. Or we might not, but it's there, I promise. Okay, so that is it for drawing our cut path with Illustrator. In the next tutorial, we're actually going to go over the process of sending this file as though you were going to send it to the laser cutter, and the settings that we would need to use for acrylic. That's it.